Welcome to EPG Pathshala. Today we shall be discussing Public Liability Insurance Act. Friends, industrial accidents or while handling hazardous substances is a common feature. World has witnessed series of accidents like Bhopal gas tragedy, Chernobyl accident in Ukraine, Flixborough accident, Seveso, Italy or Romania. There is endless list. While these hazardous substances are being held, even a slightest of negligence, slightest of carelessness, or lack of care and caution can result in a fatal accident, causing loss to the lives and injuring many people, and also damaging the property and the environment. In this backdrop, we shall be discussing what liability regime has been laid down by the Public Liability Insurance Act. What was the need of the Act? Whether there was no law up to 1991 for providing compensation to the victims of such accidents, and after the enactment of this legislation, what are the remedies available to a victim other than the workman, whether those remedies are adequate and efficacious. We shall be discussing all these things, including the procedure laid down in the Act of 1991. So friends, Public Liability Insurance Act 1991 was enacted with the aim of providing quick and speedy remedy to the victims of accidents which occur while handling hazardous substances. The list of hazardous substances is prescribed in the Act, and this Act is providing no fault remedy nor no fault liability. The liability is imposed upon the owner. This is what we are going to discuss today under the Public Liability Insurance Act. We will be dealing with the topic after analyzing the need of the Act. We will introduce the Act, the remedies available under the Act, the duties imposed upon the owner, and the environmental refund established under the Act, and also the duties and liabilities of the collector and the offences and penalties prescribed under the Act. As we said at the outset, industrial accidents while handling hazardous substances are not uncommon. We have seen many such accidents, and Bhopal gas tragedy is one such instance, which has affected the lives, property and the environment of millions of people. And if we look at the consequences, what people had to suffer while that accident happened, there were endless victims who had to file civil suits, and they have to languish for obtaining those remedies for years altogether. And therefore, if we analyze what were the remedies available up to 1991, what we find is that so far as the workers are concerned, those who are employed in the establishment, they had a remedy under the Workmen's Compensation Act 1923, which provided compensation, or which laid down for the provision of compensation to workmen in case any injury results while in the course of employment or under a notional principle when they were going for the employment. But so far as the victims were concerned, victims of the accident other than the workmen who are not employed in the establishment, who are living in the vicinity where that accident has happened while handling hazardous substances, there was no specific remedy, and therefore they had to depend upon common law remedies. When we look at the common law remedies, they are the offshoot of the British regime, since we were a colony of the British, and the Britishers introduced common law system in India also. And we find that up to 1991, the only remedy which a victim had got was either to file a civil suit for damages and compensation, or maybe to file a writ petition under Article 226 before the High Court or Article 32 before the Supreme Court of India. If we look at the remedies in the civil courts, we find that remedies were tortious liabilities or tortious remedies. Tort is a civil wrong other than a breach of contract, other than a breach of trust. So therefore, whenever any accident has happened, what the claimant or the victim was required to prove that there was a negligence on the part of the owner of the premises who had kept those hazardous substances. And therefore, to prove negligence, the victim was required to prove that the owner had a duty. He had a duty of care towards that victim, and he has breached that duty. And because of the breach of the duty, the victim has suffered damage. So it was the onus laid upon the victim, other than the workman, as I said, to prove that there was negligence, there was a duty, and that duty has been breached, which has resulted in loss of property, or maybe loss of life or injury to the person concerned. And it was a very heavy burden to discharge. And therefore, the victims found it difficult to to get compensation under the regime which was existing up to the 1991, If you look at the tort law or the common law remedies, the remedies were in the form of nuisance. Nuisance may be public nuisance, it may be private nuisance. Public nuisance is defined under section 268 of the Indian Penal Code. Therefore, the person concerned or the victim concerned could have filed a criminal litigation, or he could have filed a civil suit for claiming compensation and damages because of nuisance. When we say nuisance, nuisance means an unlawful interference with a person's use or enjoyment of land or some right over that land. Similarly, up to 1991, a civil suit could have been filed for trespass. Trespass means interference with or entering into the property of another and interfering with the enjoyment of one's land directly. And as I said, in both the cases, the party was required to prove, or the victim was required to prove, negligence on the part of the person due to which the accident has happened, or maybe the person who was occupying the premises or handling those hazardous substances. In the course of time, we see that at the international level, maybe Rylance versus Fletcher is the prime example, where the principle of strict liability has been evolved, which said that the owner of the premises or the person who has kept the hazardous substances and has put the land to unnatural or non-natural use, if those things, those chemicals, those substances escape, he shall be liable. He shall be liable on a strict liability basis to compensate for the loss of life, or maybe to compensate for the damages caused to the property of another. But this principle is as old as 1865, and with the passage of time, many exceptions have been carved out by judicial decisions like Act of God. And therefore, what we found that the Indian judiciary found when the Bhopal gas tragedy struck the nation and it shook the conscience of the world at large, that what these hazardous chemicals can cause, what kind of loss they can cause. The courts in India were confronted with, or they were given that duty to evolve a new doctrine which could cater to the needs of the people and give the victims a remedy which is efficacious, and where the liability or the burden is not that much on the victim to claim the liability. And accordingly, courts in India, in Orium gas leak case, or maybe Shriram Food and Fertilizers 1987, the Supreme Court of India declared that the doctrine of strict liability has become outdated, and therefore they evolved a new doctrine of absolute liability which admits of no exceptions whatsoever. That is basically no fault liability. That means if a person is keeping hazardous substances in his premises and those substances escape, he is liable. Keeping in view his economic strength, keeping in view his might, he is liable. But then after having evolved the strict liability, the absolute liability doctrine, what were the remedies available to the people? They could have only filed either a civil suit claiming damages and compensation, or maybe a writ under Article 226 before the High Courts, or maybe Article 32 before the Supreme Court of India. And these remedies were they were very time consuming, and the people had to suffer for years delay. We can see Bhopal gas tragedy case which has taken years altogether, rather it has taken decades to settle down, because people were not able to get the compensation and the damages from the administration, because civil suits are very lengthy proceedings and they are very expensive proceedings as well. So far as writs are concerned, writs again, you can file a writ under Article 226 for violation of your fundamental rights, and if any accident happens which causes loss of life or injury, it is violation of right to life and personal liberty guaranteed by the Constitution under Article 21 of the Constitution. But then approaching the High Court under 226 or approaching the Supreme Court under 32 is again a costly remedy and is not available to an ordinary poor litigant. And moreover, if we look at the ground scenario, we find that victims had to face a mighty, influential and powerful industrialist who can engage good lawyers, whereas a victim may not be in such a position. And therefore, there was a need to provide a remedy. That remedy which is cheap, which is inexpensive, which is quick, so that the victims can claim the compensation, they can recover the compensation in a speedy manner, in a quick manner, and without spending much. It is in this background that Public Liability Insurance Act 1991 was enacted by the Indian legislature with the aim of providing liability, or with the aim of providing compensation to the victims of such accidents which occur while handling hazardous substances. And the liability, if we look at section 3 in particular, is on no fault basis. That means even if the owner of the premises or the person who is handling those hazardous substances is not at all negligent, or he's not at fault, even then he is liable to compensate to the victim other than the workman. As I said, so far as the workman is concerned, we had a Workmen Compensation Act of 1923. He can claim compensation under that enactment. Public Liability Insurance Act has been enacted to provide compensation to those persons who are the victims of such accidents but who are not the workmen. And as I said, this act was implemented from 1st April 1991, and this has incorporated a very important principle of liability on no fault basis. Therefore, the victim is not required to prove the negligence or the fault of the occupier. The Act defines accident as an incident involving a sudden or unintentional occurrence while handling any hazardous substance, resulting in continuous, intermittent, or repeated exposure to death or injury to any person or damage to any property. But the definition says that accident does not include an accident by reason only of war or radioactivity. Similarly, the Act also defines hazardous substances. Hazardous substances have been defined to mean any substance or preparation which is defined as a hazardous substance under the Environment Protection Act of 1986 and exceeding such quantity as may be specified by notification by the central government. It is in this context that some doubts have arisen as to the meaning of hazardous substance, because the definition says that exceeding such quantity as may be specified by notification by the central government. Central government has issued a notification, and in that notification it has prescribed 179 substances as hazardous substances. They have been grouped under various heads like toxic substances group 1, toxic substances group 2. Total of 124 such substances have been prescribed. Highly reactive substances 25, explosive substances 30 such substances have been prescribed by the government, and flammable substances as hazardous substances. If we look at the definition, it says those substances which are hazardous and which have been prescribed by the central government by notification, and the quantity is also specified by the government. Whereas when we look at the Environment Protection Act, it defines hazardous substance as a substance which by reason of its chemical or physiochemical properties or handling is liable to cause harm to human beings, other living organisms, plants, microorganisms, property or the environment. Analysis of the definition shows that number one, the substance should be a hazardous substance, and if we look at the 1991 Act, it says it must be prescribed by the central government, and the quantities in excess of which this substance would be treated as a hazardous substance must also be prescribed. In this context, one question which has arisen frequently in courts is whether electricity is a hazardous substance, because electricity has not been specified by notification by the central government under the 1991 Act. And if we look at this state of UP versus UP State Electricity Board versus District Magistrate Dehradun 1998, where the Allahabad High Court was confronted with this question whether electricity is a hazardous substance or not, the Allahabad High Court declared that electricity is a hazardous substance, keeping in view that 1991 Act is a benevolent piece of legislation, is a beneficial legislation, and the interpretation which favors the public should be adopted. Similarly, in Madhya Pradesh State Electricity Board Jabalpur versus Collector Mandla 2003, Madhya Pradesh High Court was also required to decide whether notification quantifying electricity as a hazardous substance is required to be issued by the central government before compensation for loss of life or for injury by electrocution can be claimed under the 1991 Act. The High Court observed that the definition given in the Act of 1991 cannot be interpreted in a narrow, restricted sense, and it cannot be interpreted in a confined manner. They said it covers a wider canvas, and therefore the High Court said that keeping in view the definition given in the Environment Protection Act of 1986, a notification is not necessary, and that electricity is a hazardous substance. This decision has again been reiterated by the Madhya Pradesh High Court in Additional Secretary, Officer in Charge versus CRM Yadav 2014, where a person died after having coming in contact with 11 kV live wire which fell on him. The High Court allowed the claim under 1991 Act, holding that electricity is a hazardous substance within the meaning of the Act. Now let us look at the definition of handling, because again it has caused trouble and the courts have been asked to interpret this term in context of electricity again. The term handling has been defined in the Act of 1991 to mean manufacture, processing, treatment, package, storage, transportation by vehicle, use, collection, destruction, conversion, offering for sale, transfer or like of such hazardous substances. Now, if you look at another judgment of Madhya Pradesh High Court, Mankeenwar versus Chairman, where a 22-year-old person, he went to agriculture field to operate a motor pump and he received electrical shock when he came in contact with the open parts of live wire of the starter, and the person died instantaneously. It was contended on behalf of the service provider, that is the electricity company, that the provisions of Electricity Supply Code 2004, the liability of electricity supply company is up to the outgoing terminal, and they pleaded that in the instant case, death has resulted while coming in contact with the live wire which is attached to the starter, and therefore the accident has taken place outside the precincts of that company, and it is outside, therefore is outside the purview of the liability, because it has not taken place at the terminal, outgoing terminal, rather it has taken place while he came in contact with the starter of the motor pump. The court clarified that the definition of handling says the use, and the court said the use of electricity tantamounts to handling the same, and therefore 1991 Act is applicable, and the applicability of 1991 cannot be curtailed on the ground that death has taken place beyond the precincts of the party. Similarly, in 2014 again, Madhya Pradesh High Court, before the Madhya Pradesh High Court, it was contended that when a person died by falling off 11 kV wire, that it was accidental and there was no fault of the electricity company. It was also contended that the accident has taken place beyond the precincts of the electricity company. The Madhya Pradesh High Court turned down such contentions and made the company liable under Public Liability Insurance Act 1991 on the principle of no fault liability. Now that is what is meant by handling. Now let us see what are the duties which are imposed by the Act on the owners, on the owner of the premises where the hazardous substances are being kept. The first and foremost duty which this Act is imposing upon the owner is to take out an insurance policy. Because as we said, the aim of the Act is to provide easy, quick and inexpensive remedy to the victim. Therefore, what the Act requires is any owner of a premises where the hazardous substances are kept, before he starts business or before he starts handling hazardous substances, he shall get himself an insurance policy for liability which may arise to give compensation. And if he is an already registered, already established institution, within 1 year, the owner has been mandated to obtain an insurance policy for meeting the liability which may arise under the Act. And every owner has been made duty bound to renew the policy from time to time so that the policy does not lapse. And if a policy has not been renewed, then the owner can be made liable and the amount can be recovered from him by attaching his properties in the same manner as areas of land revenue can be recovered from him. The policy can be obtained for an amount not more than 50 crores. And the amount shall be equivalent to paid up capital of the company, that is all the assets, the net worth of the company, the assets of the company, the stock held by the company, up to that amount. That should be the minimum amount of the policy, and the maximum amount is 50 crores for which a policy can be obtained, is required to be obtained by the owner of the premises. So far as the central government, state government and local authorities are concerned, and the corporations which are owned or controlled by the government, state or central are concerned, they can be exempted from the operation of this law, because if they have already established a fund for the purpose of giving compensation which may arise, or for damages which may arise under the Act. So far as the liability to pay compensation of the insurance company is concerned, the extent of liability is provided in Rule 10 of this Public Liability Insurance Rules, which says that if in case of single accident, the liability of the company shall be up to 5 crores. And if there are more accidents during one period or during the tenure of the policy, then the maximum liability is 15 crores. However, if there is an excess compensation which is awarded, that can be recovered from the environmental refund which is established under Section 7A of the Act, which we will be discussing a little later. Now let us come to the main point. What are the remedies provided under the Act? There are two basic provisions. One is Section 3, another one is Section 6. Section 3 proceeds on no fault liability. This indeed is a statutory recognition of the doctrine of absolute liability, which was evolved by the Supreme Court of India in Orium gas leak case. Just like Section 140 of the Motor Vehicles Act, where the liability of the owner of the vehicle is there if any death or any injury is caused, whether he is at fault or not. The same principle has been adopted in Section 3 of this Public Liability Insurance Act, which says that whenever any accident has happened while handling hazardous substances, the owner shall be liable whether he is negligent or not, and the victim shall not be required to prove that the owner of the premises was negligent. He shall not be required to prove that he has committed any fault, or there is any default or any negligence or any other act on the part of the owner of that premises. Therefore, the liability, as I said, is on no fault basis. Liability is imposed upon the owner, and owner means the person who handles or who has control over that hazardous substance at the time when that accident has happened. In case of a partnership firm, any of the partners can be held to be owners. In case of association of persons, the members are owners. And in case of a company, any of its directors, managers, secretary, or any officer who is in charge of and is responsible for conduct of the business of the company is the owner of the company. The liability arises when any damage is caused to a person other than the workman, and or maybe damages caused to the property, then the injuries can be claimed. As I said, the person is not required to prove and plead that the death or the injury or the damage to the property has been due to the wrongful act, neglect, or default of any person. Section 3, along with the first schedule attached to the Act, provide the liquidated damages. That means the damages or the amount which can be claimed under Section 3 has already been fixed. If we look at the first schedule, we find that when any injury has been caused to the person, he can claim reimbursement of medical expenses up to a maximum of 12,500 rupees in each case. In case of a fatal accident, the relief granted shall be maximum of 25,000 per person, plus reimbursement of medical expenses incurred in treatment up to a maximum of 12,500. In case permanent total disablement or permanent partial disablement results due to the accident while handling hazardous substances, then the reimbursement of medical expenses up to a maximum of 12,500 in each case is allowed, and in case total permanent disablement occurs, then maximum of 25,000 is provided in the Act. Similarly, if there is loss of wages due to temporary partial disablement, then the damages which can be awarded are 1,000 per month up to a maximum 3 months. But then the victim is required to show that he was hospitalized for a period exceeding 3 days and he is above 16 years of age. In case any loss to property occurs, then the damages which can be claimed are up to 6,000 rupees depending upon the actual damage. 6,000 is the maximum amount. One thing which must be kept in mind, that Section 3 provides an additional remedy. That means if a person has a right to claim damages under any other law for the timing in force, he is at liberty, he is free to file a civil suit or file a writ and claim damages under that enactment. The right under 1991 Act is an additional right. But when he has claimed damages under any other law for the time being in force, the damages awarded under this Act, they shall be reduced from the amount which is granted to him under that enactment. In addition to the liquidated damages which are given in Section 3, there is Section 6 which provides that the victim other than the workman, he can file an application for relief. The application, who can file that application? The application can be filed by the victim, by the injured victim. If the victim has died, then his legal representatives can file an application. Or if a loss is caused to the property, the owner of that property or any person who is duly authorized, who is the agent of that person, can file an application. Application under Section 6 shall be filed before the collector of that district where the accident has taken place. It is required to be filed in Form 1. There are certain documents which must be appended along with that application. That is the certificate from a registered physician regarding disability or injury caused by the accident. In case of death, the death certificate and the postmortem report. In case there is a disablement and therefore the loss of wages, then certificate from the employer regarding the loss of wages due to temporary disablement or partial disability with the proof of hospitalization of a period exceeding 3 days, and certificate about the date of birth, that is the age, medical bills and receipts. Plus he is also required to append certificate of cost of repairs if the loss has been caused to the property. These are the documents which are required to be filed along with the application. Application is required to be filed within 5 years from the date of the accident. Once the application is filed before the collector is required to give notice of that application to both the parties, and then both the parties must be given a reasonable opportunity of being heard. Thereafter, the collector is required to conduct an inquiry into the claim or claims which may be preferred before him, and he is required to follow the summary procedure. After he has made an inquiry and given an opportunity of being heard and after notice to all the parties, he may make an award and determine the amount of relief which appears to him to be just, specifying to whom that relief shall be payable and by whom this amount shall be payable. The copies of this award are required to be given to the parties as early as possible, but in any case within 15 days of the date when this award has been passed. Where the collector has passed an award, then if the insurance company is liable to pay that amount, the insurance company's liability is there to deposit that amount with the collector within 30 days from the date of the award. And if the owner is required to pay any amount, the owner is also required to deposit that amount before the collector as may be prescribed. If the owner or the insurance company does not deposit the amounts within the period prescribed, then these amounts can be recovered in the same manner as a public demand or as areas of land revenue by attaching the properties of that person, by attaching the bank accounts or in any other manner. The application filed before the collector is required to be disposed of within 3 months from the date of the application. The collector is deemed to be a civil court for the purposes of conducting inquiry under this act, and therefore he shall have all the powers of a civil court regarding enforcing the attendance of witnesses, issuing summons for the attendance of witnesses, discovery of documents, production of documents, receiving evidence on affidavits, or maybe summoning a record of the public officers, or examining the witnesses, issuing commissions for the examination of witnesses, or if any party does not appear, deciding applications ex parte, and he shall have the inherent powers of a civil court to do substantial justice to the parties. So therefore, he also has the power that if the owner is trying to sell off his property, dispose of his property with a view to avoid any proceedings under this act, or with a view to evade the payment of compensation under this act, the collector can grant temporary injunction or stay order against that owner. If we examine the judgment of Allahabad High Court in UP Power Corporation Limited versus District Magistrate 2017, now what happened in this case, 2 school children, while they were going to the school, they were electrocuted because of falling off a high tension power line, 11,000 volt power line pole on them. 1 children died and other was seriously injured. It was a fact on record that pole was not in a proper condition. The collector awarded damages of 5 lakhs to the deceased and 1 lakh to the injured. The decision was challenged before the High Court. It was contended before the High Court that the collector's powers are limited under Section 3, that he cannot grant damages beyond 25,000 rupees as is provided in Section 3. But the High Court turned down this contention and clarified that on an application filed under Section 6, collector, after following the procedure, that means after giving notice, after giving reasonable opportunity, and after making an inquiry, he can make an award and grant compensation as may appear him to be just. And therefore the court said his powers are not limited up to 25,000, and therefore the court clarified that the monetary limits specified under Section 3 are not applicable in case of application under Section 6. That's what we said at the outset, that Section 3 provides an easy remedy which is on no fault basis, where the damages are specified in the first schedule. But when we look at Section 6, that application, when it is made to the collector, collector can grant any compensation, any amount of award which he believes is just in the facts of the case. And therefore, to provide compensations and damages, the Act has mandated the establishment of environment relief fund under Section 7A to the central government, and central government has complied with the mandate of the Act and has promulgated a scheme, Environment Relief Fund Scheme of 2008. Now, under this scheme of 2008 or refund scheme of 2008, the owner is required to contribute towards this fund in addition to the premium amount which he is paying for taking a policy for public liability insurance. So, the amount which shall be equivalent to the premium amount shall be paid by the owner as his contribution to Environment Relief Fund Scheme. The fund manager has been appointed, United India Insurance Company has been appointed as fund manager right from the beginning. It has been appointed till 31st March 2019 as the fund manager. owner, after paying the amount towards or depositing the amount towards the environment refund, is required to file Form 3 so as to inform the fund manager within 15 days of the payment that he has discharged his liability and contributed towards environment refund. And if the owner makes a delay in depositing this amount, interest at the rate of 18% per annum can be charged from the owner. This ERF is utilized for paying the compensation by the collector in case the insurance policy obtained by the owner is insufficient to meet the liability. That liability can be met out of the environmental refund scheme of 2008. Now let us examine what are the powers and functions of various authorities under the Act of 1991. When any accident happens, the first responsibility is on the collector. The collector is required to verify the claims, to make an inquiry, and thereafter to publish that such and such accident has happened while handling hazardous substances, so that all those victims who are affected by the accident, they can file an application for claims before the collector under Section 6. The central government and also the state government, because power has now been delegated to the state governments, they can call for any information to find out whether the provisions of 1991 Act has been complied with. Similarly, the officers authorized by the central government, there is a long list of officers which are authorized by the central government, and this power has also been delegated to the state governments. They can enter upon any premises at all reasonable times if they are of the opinion that some hazardous substances are being handled or are being kept in these premises. They can, for the purpose of determining whether the provisions of the Act has been complied with, that is whether the policy, that is the insurance policy, has been taken or not, they can enter those premises at any time, at all reasonable times of course, so as to ensure the compliance. And they also have been given the powers of entry and inspection. They can enter those premises, they can search those premises, and if they find that the hazardous substances are being handled without taking an insurance policy, they can seize those substances. And if they find that those substances cannot be kept in a safe manner, they can dispose of those substances and the cost shall be incurred from the owner. Similarly, the central government and state government have been empowered to issue directions to the officers, to the authorities, to the agencies, to the pollution control boards, as well as to the owner of the premises where the hazardous substances are being kept. These directions may include prohibition of handling hazardous substances or regulation of the handling of hazardous substances, or maybe in an extreme cases stopping the supply of electricity, water or any other service. If we look at the rules, these directions are required to be in writing, and they shall specify the nature of action to be taken by that authority or by that person, by that owner. And then the notice shall be given to that person, that he shall be served with the soft copy of those the directions, and shall be given an opportunity of being heard before directions can be imposed upon him. And he shall also be given an opportunity of filing objections against them within 45 days of the date of the receipt of those objections. However, if the government is of the opinion that grave accident or grave injury can be caused by wasting this much of time in giving of those directions, the government may dispense with the requirement of giving the time for filing of objections. In case how these directions are to be given, how these are to be served, they can be sent by registered post in case of a company at the principal place or at the registered place of that company, or they can also be affixed on the conspicuous part of the premises of that registered office or the principal place of business of the company. In case the directions are to be served upon a government servant, they can be addressed to that government servant, sent by registered post, with the endorsement to the head of the department and to the secretary of that government, as the case may be. They can be sent by registered post or they can be tendered to him. In any other case, these directions or the copy of these directions are required to be addressed to the person concerned and sent or tendered to him by registered post. The government officers and the officers which are authorized by the government for ensuring the compliance of the Act, they have the power, they can move the court. If they find that an establishment is handling hazardous substances without complying with the requirements of the Act, without obtaining an insurance policy as contemplated by the Act, they can move the civil court and apply for injunction, stay order against the person who is committing non-compliance with the provisions of the Act. And the court may pass any order which it deems suitable in the circumstances of the case. After having laid down the liabilities of various officers, the functions of the officers, and as well as of the owner, let us examine what are the penalties which are provided under the Act. If we look at section 14 and 15, we find various penalties have been provided upon various persons for various defaults. If any person, the owner, fails to take the insurance policy, or if he does not get that policy renewed, or he does not make payment towards environment relief fund, which is established under section 7A of the Act, then he can be sentenced to imprisonment for a minimum period of 1.5 years, and this can extend up to 6 years, or he may be inflicted the punishment of fine of 1 lakh rupees, or he may be inflicted with both. That means he can also be sentenced to imprisonment as well as fine. And if any person who has already been convicted of any of these offences, he commits the offence again, that he is a repeat offender, in that case the minimum punishment is 2 years, which can extend up to 7 years. Plus he shall also be liable to fine of 1 lakh rupees, which shall not be less than 1 lakh rupees. Similarly, section 15 provides for offences, penalties for various offences. That means when, as we said, the government, central government or the state government can call for the information. They can authorize any officer to enter upon any premises at all reasonable times, to conduct search and seize the hazardous substances. If any person obstructs their entry, or any person obstructs their performance of their functions of search and seizure, or does not furnish the information desired, then he can be punished with imprisonment up to 3 months, or with fine which can extend up to 10,000 rupees. If the offences are committed by the companies, provisions are made for this also in the Act. Section 16 provides, if the offence is committed by the company, then not only the company is guilty, but all those persons who were in charge of and were responsible for the conduct of the affairs of the company, they are also guilty of that offence. Similarly, but if that person proves that the act was committed without his knowledge, without his connivance, and that he has taken due care and caution, and that he has taken all steps to prevent the commission of the offence, then he shall not be liable. Every director, manager, or secretary of the company, if the offence is committed with their knowledge, or with their connivance, or with their consent, they shall also be guilty of the offence along with the company. It must be clarified here that they are liable to imprison, to fine. However, since the company is not a natural person, it is a juristic person, and it cannot be sent to imprisonment. But the Supreme Court of India and Standard Chartered Bank 2005 has already clarified that even in those cases where the punishment prescribed is only of sentence, it does not mean that company is not liable of the offence. The company is still liable, and the persons who were responsible for the conduct of the affairs of the company, they are guilty, and the punishment can be imposed upon them. Similarly, section 17 deals with offences by the government departments. If any government department commits an offence, then the person who is the head of that government department shall be deemed to be guilty of the offence. However, if that person proves that the offence was committed without his knowledge and that he exercised due diligence, he can avoid his liability under the Act. So friends, we have discussed the provisions of the Act and have found that Act is a benevolent piece of legislation which has provided for quick remedies under this Act of 1991. But if we look at the implementation of the Act, in September 2015, Government of India, Ministry of Forests and Climate Change, Environment, Forests and Climate Change, issued a press note and a notification, and that notification itself claims that Public Liability Insurance Act has not been implemented in letter and spirit. The notification itself claims that many owners have not undertaken that public liability insurance because of ignorance. That shows even after more than 2 decades of the implementation of the Act, many owners are unaware of their liability and they have not taken public liability insurance. And that is the reason that many accidents, when they happen, the victims are unable to get the relief under the Act. And therefore, the Government of India, the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has already stated that the provisions should be publicized, and that the Central Pollution Control Board and State Pollution Control Board shall include it in the checklist itself before granting them the permission, the consent to operate. They should ensure that public liability insurance has been undertaken. Secondly, if we look at Section 3, we find that section has been drafted way back in 1991. And the amount of compensation provided thereunder is too meager, keeping in view that since 1991, much water has flown down the river. And therefore, that amount prescribed under Section 3 is inadequate. Besides these two drawbacks of the enactment. It's a very good piece of legislation which is based on no fault liability, which is aimed at providing quick and easy justice to the victims. Thank you.